Well, we appreciate the willingness for you to come back to the table today to discuss things. I was surprised. In fact, I was just getting on the expressway to head back to Boise when I got the frantic calls. I checked out of my hotel and everything, so I was able to turn back around and come and be here, which I think is important to be here. We think under the circumstances and the way things ended the other day that probably the best way to go is, just because Daryl's here, is to go back into mediation and see what ifs we can work out and deal with those. And then hopefully, because Daryl has to leave by he's got a noon flight, so he's got to be out of here. And that doesn't mean things necessarily stop if we're progressing at that point in time. It just means that that's our loss of his services at that point in time. So with that, I request that we go back into mediation.
We can. We have a proposal to set forward first, and then we can.
And that's fine.
We're on though.
Yes.
We're okay. Let's see, how many do we got over there? 5, 6,
And we need
7.
one for entry.
All right. This is union proposal number 1 as to article number 6. Is there retention incentive here? So obviously, having reviewed the budget reports for the fiscal years, it's clear that the chief is very fiscally responsible. That he's turning in, somewhere between $600,000 and $800,000 a year, coming in approximately. I think that's 5% under budget, So in looking at the meeting minutes, I believe it was for the April 12th meeting, or rather reviewing the video. I believe Ashley stated during that meeting that the city had met its reserve for the general fund reserve, and so at this point, what the union would like to see then is if compensation itself can't come up for whatever reason, that the excess budget be dispersed to the members in the form of a retention bonus at the end of the fiscal year.
Incentive.
I just have a few initial questions just so I understand. When you're talking about who works during the fiscal year, so if they're employed for 1 day, they're entitled to it?
That's probably something that we would have to address as to...
I'm just trying to look at what the scope of things are.
So I think it's written in here that it's based on the number of full months of service that they were employed during that fiscal year.
Yeah, so they're only employed a month, and they would only get a month's share of that rather than a 12-month share.
So explain to me how, if you have a mix of people, that some have worked a month, some have worked 4 months, some have worked 12 months, how that calculation would occur, just so I understand.
Well, so you look at the number of employees you have, and you look at the excess budget money that's left, and you divide it by that number, and then you can divide that by 12, and then distribute it based on the number of months that somebody was actually in.
Okay. So you basically take it down to a monthly amount and then times it by the number of months that the person worked. Okay.
And the distribution is even across all ranks and across all pay
Yes.
pay grades.
Right.
So it's not based upon the amount they're making.
No.
Anybody else have any questions?
I'm curious if this is, if this is in lieu of something else or in addition to, where are you at with your other offers?
Right, so, I mean, we, looking at the fiscal year reports, and taking the numbers that we got back, right? So the 2.5% increase is gonna cost $144,000, right? So last year, for example, when over $700,000 went back into the general fund under budget, if you do the math on that, so you go 144,000 times 4, you can see that a 10% increase would have been possible without asking for an extra dollar, right, with that excess money. But obviously, asking for getting a 10% increase will increase the overall budget as well, because you don't want to just spend every single dollar in the budget, or budget yourself that tightly. So if it makes it easier, then that excess funding at the end of the year can just be distributed rather than increasing the budget itself.
And how do you define personnel savings?
Oh, I mean, as it's set out here, I mean, really what we're just talking about is excess budget money.
Payroll.
Yeah. So, for example, last year,
Well, but the problem is the rollback money is everything that wasn't spent in the budget.
Right.
It could be supplies.
and that's really what we mean, is all of that.
But it's referenced as personnel savings.
Okay,
I'm
so we
trying-
can
I'm trying to
change the
figure-
verbiage if we need to, but.
So it's any
that's-
and all rollback money.
That's right.
Okay. And the time period for that would be the last day of the fiscal year.
Right.
And you understand that those are two different things, correct? Personnel and operating costs are two different budgets.
Sure, and we can change the verbiage if we need to, but the idea is just the excess budget money, so
From
that.
payroll savings.
Right.
So
Payroll
which
is
is only.
So you're
That's
just-
personnel, not operating.
So we're just talking about the personnel lines.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Let's go into executive session so we can talk about this.
When that was available for you guys.
We're back in legal.
See ya.
Let me see if I can get you Paradise instead. Nope, you're in a Womazawa.
She was the doctor. MRI.